I'm going to show you how to make beaded bracelets today. All the materials I used for this bracelet are going to be linked in the description through Amazon. So what I recommend using is a beading board for whenever you want to map out the design of your bracelet. I just got this one off of Amazon. What I like to do is use a mixture of different sized beads, because if it were to just be like strictly this size, this 10mm size throughout the whole bracelet, then it's just gonna look kind of boring. But so I just use a mixture of these different sizes right here. So I usually just put basic 10mm bead right next to the charm holder right here. And I like to use these cute little angel wing spacer beads right next to that right here. I don't like to put the same color beads together because I think it just throws off that balance. See what I mean? Like if I were to put this black bead right there, then it would just be boring and just not really well balanced. But this right here, I have the black, silver, and then the gray bead. And then I can go ahead and add another black bead. And what I would usually do is put a spacer bead in the middle of these two, but I know I'm going to have my accent charms in the middle of those two beads right there, so I'm chill. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put a spacer bead there. But I really like this format of the bracelets. I just think it balances really well. And since I have that spacer bead right there, I'm gonna go ahead and put another black bead right there. And I also keep in mind where I know my bracelet is going to end, and that's gonna be at this 3 mark right here. Usually that's like the sweet spot for the bracelet sizes, because I do add an extra chain as well so that it's more of a universal size. So I know that this is probably like the middle-ish of my bracelet. I'm gonna add another one of those 10mm beads there and here, as well as another black bead. Since I'm getting pretty close to the end, I'm just going to keep the beads pretty small. I got this black one here, and then I like to end my bracelets with another spacer bead. So this is the main strand of my bracelet done, and now I'm just going to take my silver 0.45mm beading wire. So I'm using a crimp tube this time, as well as a wire protector. Just going to put the wire protector down there, and then bead the wire into this other side of the protector. And then I'm going to put this other end of the wire into the crimp bead. Then before I actually crimp this part, I like to make sure that it's separated. So I grab a hold of both of these wires and make sure it's spread apart. Then I'm going to grab my crimping pliers, and I'm going to crimp this tube in the middle one. Kind of see it's like a V shape almost in there. And then I'm going to crimp the rest of it down at this very end one. I'm just using all my pressure to make sure it's as crimped as possible. And then I'm going to use my wire cutters to cut the end part of this wire. Then I'm going to use one of the crimp covers, and I actually bought the wrong size, unfortunately. So it's going to be sitting kind of awkward on there. And I'm going to take my flat nose pliers. I had to squish it because, yeah, they're too small. But that, I guess that, still looks pretty nice. And then I'm going to roughly measure the wire so that there's a bit of space after this 3 right here. So I actually have some room to do the same thing I did here onto the other side. So one thing you gotta watch out for whenever you are using beading wire, if you don't store it properly, like in this spool, then it can start to kind of like do this on you. And if it does do that and you try to bead your bracelet onto here, then this is how your bracelet's gonna look, and you probably don't want that. So just make sure that you take care of this. So I gotta actually trash this one, unfortunately. And since I reached the 10mm bead. I'm gonna bead one of the bead caps onto the wire, and then I'm going to bead the actual 10mm bead. Take a shot every time I say bead. And then another bead cap. See, I think like with the bead caps, it just adds so much to the bracelet. It just adds so much to the design. For example, if this wasn't there, I feel like it wouldn't look very nice, right? But with that bead cap there, it adds a divider between the black bead. I don't know, it looks good. I like it. So personally, I like to wait until I'm done with my bracelet to attach the accent charms onto it. So then your strand should look something like this. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and do the same thing that I did with the other side of the wire to this side of it. And then the easiest way to bring this down to here, hold on to the actual wire protector, then you grab onto this loose side of the wire and then just pull down like that. But since I'm going to be adding these accent charms, I'm actually going to bring this up a little bit, and then I'm going to crimp this bead. And I'm going to bead the accent charm through. And I decided I wanted to put this charm in the middle of here. So since I have that room, it's easy for me to stick that jump ring in the middle of there. Grab a hold of the other side with another pair of pliers. Just close it up. And I'm just going to do the same thing for this side as well. There you go. Your first strand is complete. And then for the second strand, I usually just like freestyle it. I'm just gonna grab myself another strand of beading wire and do that same thing where I finish this side and leave the other side open. And I'm just going to measure it again, a little bit more room than that 3 inches. So I'm going to be using these glass tube beads. Of course, if you'd like to have another strand that's as detailed as that one, go for it. But what I like to do is to, like I said, I talk a lot about balance, but I think there's like a really nice balance when there's the one strand that is super like complex, and then there's another strand that is kind of like this. It's just kind of more on the basic side, but I just love that combo right there. So I'm gonna line these ends up together. I'm gonna start off with a medium-sized bead. I believe this one's 4mm. I'm gonna bead that through, and then I'm gonna take one of my spacer beads, bead that, and then take a 2mm bead, bead that through. This is that beginning part, and after that black bead, I'm gonna take one of my glass beads right here, and then bead one of those through. So it's starting to look like this. And usually I just like to kind of measure it out, see how many of this pattern can I do to make it to the very end, so that this isn't too long or this isn't too short. I want them to be the same length. So I think I'm gonna put another one of the glass beads and then the small one, and then do this pattern again right there, and it should be about that length. Whenever you are working with the glass beads, I would definitely recommend having a regular bead at the very end of your strand, because if you were to use your crimp pliers, it could break that glass bead right here. Then to attach the two strands together, I use a stainless steel chain and a little lobster clasp. And I'm just gonna take my pliers and take off one of the links, then attach my lobster clasp onto the link, grab my two strands, just bead them through, and then you're going to just close it up. And then I'm going to take around maybe 2 inches chain, and I'm going to attach it onto the other side. So this is optional, but I like to take another accent charm and just put it on the end of the bracelet. And I don't know, I think it just adds like a more polished look than just the end of that chain, you know? Perfect, now you got the base of the bracelet down. Last but not least, just add your pendant, which I'm actually gonna be using a locket. It opens up. Woo! Whenever you are putting on your pendant, just keep in mind what side you want the lobster clasp to be on. Like if you're right-handed, I'd recommend having the clasp on the right side and vice versa if you're left-handed. And then the bracelet is done. But what I like to do is on top of this little flat surface of the locket, I like to add little flat back charms. I just put a tiny drop of glue on there. Then I'm just gonna place that charm on the locket. And there you go. Now, I actually put custom locket pictures into my lockets for my customers. So let me know if you want a tutorial on how I do that. It's super easy. I've tried following other tutorials on YouTube and they're just like super complex, but I found a perfect way to do it super easily. Let me know if this tutorial was easy for you to follow. I'd love to see the bracelets you ended up making, so please tag me on my Instagram. And if you'd like to buy this bracelet, it's available on my Etsy, which is linked in the description. Have a great day.